Miss Andrews, are you okay?
Definitely not. I'm actress Valerie Allen, and I play Amy Andrews in the new film, The Empty Space.
It's okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
A violent attack leaves her without her boyfriend, her home, her sense of self. Amy, like so many of us, suffers from mental illness. As she tries to get her life back together, she's haunted by terrifying visions that may or may not be real. Empty Space goes beyond the slasher and takes you deep into the void. We hope you join us as our film premieres on streaming. We also hope that not only are you frightened, but you gain some insight into a serious problem that affects so many people, including the filmmakers.
I know how it sounds. What if it's real?
The Empty Space, a terrifying new vision from director Andrew Hara.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast. We got another guest episode because no one liked the Dark Alliance episode. William's still gone, but check out The Empty Space. It's on Tubi. It's perfect for Halloween, and guess what? It's also Hispanic Heritage Month. So now you got to watch all three of them in a row, or you hate Hispanics. Welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. We have a guest, as I said. We have my friend Gayla Lacy.
Hello.
And me and Gayla Lacy, you might be seeing her in a couple of things coming up, and maybe a couple more. So keep checking out the page and see if I can edit things on time. Today's episode, Josh is here too. You can tell because he has headphones on. Also, we're gonna have an episode called "How Many Times Is Andrew Gonna Reference Psych?" The answer is a bunch, because today we're covering Holes. Let me find out the year.
2003.
Thank you. Film directed by Andrew Davis, written by Louis Kazar, based on his book, and starring Shia LaBeouf himself, Sigourney Weaver, the hero of horror, and John Voight. And also, it stars a bunch of people you've probably seen, like Tim Blake Nelson comes up. There's one of the kids who plays Zero. I've seen him, he was in a bunch of stuff at the time. But yeah, before we go into it, Josh, why don't you tell me what Holes is about?
Oh man, it's about so many things. It's strangely complicated. It's about a cursed family, and the son is sent to a desert prison camp for a crime he didn't commit. But it turns out the camp is connected to his past.
Right. Well, not his past, but the past of his generation.
His family's, his bloodline, yeah.
Yeah. This is a tie-in to Mortal Kombat, whose tagline this time is "It's in the blood," which only I know because nobody else cares about Mortal Kombat enough to memorize the tagline for the game. So, Gayla, as always, our guest picked our episode. So, Gayla, why did you pick Holes?
Well, Holes has always been one of those comfort movies for me. It's one that I would always watch back to back to back, and I never understood why I liked it so much. And also, when I was younger, I read the book, and I felt like the film adaptation to it was the most true to the book that it could get, but also translated into the film story world in the most accurate way, I feel. And so I chose it because it's been one of my favorites for a while. And again, a comfort movie.
Cool. Well, and one of the funny things about that, and saying that makes it even funnier, because the only piece of trivia that was worth mentioning, other than a Sigourney Weaver thing Josh is going to talk about later, is that originally Richard Kelly, the director of our 1,000 subscriber special, whenever that happens, Southland Tales, originally was hired to write the script. And so what he did was he set it in post-apocalyptic America. And then now, instead of what they're hunting for is a hammer that shoots electricity, and he changed the names, and he made it instead of whatever they're accused of, which we'll get into, he killed his sister in a mercy killing because she had too much radiation poisoning. And Disney was like, "Are you insane? No." And thankfully, whoever produced Southland Tales said, "Are you insane? Go ahead, and we'll get to it." But
what a Richard Kelly move
this
to
is a
do
Richard
that.
Kelly appreciation podcast. But and I think like I don't know. We can ask Josh what he thought about it too. But I think to me, one of the best things was kind of like I mean the stakes are high, but they're never like crazy high where like you're killing your sister because she has too much radiation poisoning. And so I think that like takes out a lot of what makes this movie work for me. If you set it in a post-apocalyptic world and like they're
Yeah,
like
it has to be a little bit low stakes.
yeah
I mean, although it is weird because it's like this. I mean, and obviously, I think the book was written in like the '90s, and then this was like 2003. Like the child abduction camp, labor camps are like real, but it's like that is a real serious problem now. But it's like it's almost like kind of like this was the precursor to that actual phenomenon, but as like a family friendly kind of kids movie. It's very strange.
Oh
It's
yeah.
yeah. Well, and I think it's cool because like that's what I'm saying. Like everything that's in this movie could happen to an actual kid. Like going to a juvenile like correction camp, having the guards be kind of shady, but like not shady enough where they're like really beating. Like they could have gone all the way, and they
it's
have
not
a
like sleepers. You're not gonna do sleepers.
but it's more like in line with kind of how it is. Like when you have like a principal or someone who's just kind of a dick, like this is kind of how they act.
Yeah, that's what I
Right.
liked about it. It was like the absurdity of it, but
Mhm.
also the realness of going to this strange camp in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and like they really brought that episode. Like I remember, I think I went to an overnight camp a couple of times, and it's like it's always weird. And I like this isn't a camp; it's like a different type of thing. But they kind of captured that feel of like you don't really know everyone, and you're trying to like get to know everyone, but they already have their cliques. And
Right.
so I think like one of the best things about this movie is it makes they all feel like kids. They talk like kids. They act like kids, and it kind of elevates the material.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
think the casting for it was amazing as well because they all fit that kind of innocent kid. I mean, all of them obviously were juvenile, the part of the juvenile detention facility,
Right.
but they all kind of honed their character very well, especially
Yeah.
with Shia LaBeouf. I think.
Yeah, and I think there's a scene at the end that I don't want to spoil yet, but we'll get to it. That I think really kind of drives the point home of like they're just kids. And I also think like watching this movie, you're kind of seeing the people who are in it. Like Sigourney Weaver plays the warden.
The
And you've
warden,
never really
yeah.
seen Sigourney Weaver in like a villain role, but she does a real good job. But it's kind of like, why is Sigourney Weaver in this kids movie? She's such a good actress, but she elevates that role and makes it more than just kind of like the standard bad guy villain.
It's also like it's very funny because you only see there's only 3 adults at this camp, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was just like shorthand for like, oh, they just didn't want to film a bunch of extras. But it's like, oh no, it really is just 3 adults running this camp. Of course, it was a scam. Like there's this like I don't know. And it's almost like to me, it's an interesting setup because obviously it's like you get there and like Sigourney Weaver's like the warden and she's kind of stern, and then John Voight's kind of like her like seedy right hand man.
Hmm.
John Voight, the best wig I've ever seen, and
Yeah,
facial
he has the
hair.
most hideous wig that's ever been.
it's very, it's
Yeah.
very Joe Dirt. But then the third guy, Tim Blake Nelson, Buster Scruggs, I almost like this switch where you think he's the nice one, and then you
Mhm.
kind of realize like, oh no, he's awful. Like
Yeah.
like he's trying to do these like therapy sessions for the kids, but it's just to like bring them down and like insult them, kind of.
Yeah. Like he's
It's
the nicest of the bunch, but he kind of sucks still.
yeah, he's like the good cop, but he's still doing like shitty things to them. Like yeah, when he like mocks the kid for not being able to read and being like he'll never read. He's too stupid. It's like Jesus, that's hard. Even in this kids movie, I'm like feeling this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the other two are like more hardcore. Not necessarily hardcore like discipliners, but with him it was like he was more of the mental torturer, like
Yeah,
gotten their feels,
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the mind games. Yeah,
mind games. That's right.
Yeah, and like to kind of give some more details. So like, they've all been sent to the juvenile detention center, and like they're in the middle of nowhere. And what they have them do is like digging these holes, and they're telling them like, oh, it's to build character, but they're clearly looking for something.
Mhm.
And so then we keep flashing back to like the kind of history of the ranch and the area. And so then it kind of goes like it's a pretty intense, like they're covering like a lot of facts because like you go
Yeah.
back and like, oh, go ahead, Josh.
No, it's true. No, it's just like because there's two different bloodlines you're following with flashbacks to both, and I was like, oh man, they're really going for it in this movie. It's
Yeah.
cool.
And one like the story is like there was this guy and he was African American and he's back in that time and like he's selling stuff and then he kind of kisses one of the white women and so they like it's against the law so they kill him and then she kind of becomes this outlaw but you find out she's an outlaw first and what she does is everyone she kills she gives them a kiss and it's because like of that because they killed him for kissing her that now she's punishing all these like people who kind of took the law into their own hands. She's murdering them. And I was like, wow, this is intense for a children's movie
I
with
know.
Shia LaBeouf, you know?
That was my favorite. Like one of my favorite parts of that was that backstory. Like at first, when you first watch it, you're just like, how exactly does this correlate? But then in the end, like, oh man, I loved it so much. And what's her outlaw persona name again?
Oh, Kissin' Kate Barlow.
Kissing Kate Barlow, yeah.
Because she would kill them and then plant like a kiss on their like cheek or whatever, afterwards.
Yeah.
With the lipstick.
Yeah.
It's a good
Well,
touch.
It's kind of interesting because they tie it together without you realizing it, where the guy's obviously also the guy's played by Gus from Psych. And
Dual Hill, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to not see Gus as Gus. But they have like they show like obviously it's against the law for him to even kiss a woman, and then she really doesn't have any power because like once that happens, like she's like, don't kill him, and they're like, we don't like, you're a woman, like who cares?
Mhm.
And then it kind of like they parallel that with the kids, where like Zero, who's Shia LaBeouf's friend, like he shouldn't really be there, and like they don't have any paperwork for him, but he's just kind of there, and it's like these are three groups that are they're easily falling through the cracks of society, whether it was in the past or whether it's in the present, and it's an interesting connection between these marginalized people that you don't think about until you kind of get confronted with it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole dynamic of just taking advantage of minority or kids and then women in like the past and the flashback scenes. That's what I really liked about it too. It resonates with today's issues.
Right.
Well, it's like these are such serious, current, like relevant issues that if you totally like change the tone, but it was the same like premise, it could be like a thriller. Like it's very like
filmed in this way that it's still very lighthearted and like it's still like kids can enjoy it and like adults can enjoy it and stuff, and it's like wow, this is a great way to send these messages and to like educate people, but in a very fun, like kind of not fan but fiction way. And and then plus like with the whole like curse thing and them trying to find I don't know if I should say trying to find.
Oh, you can, yeah.
With
the cross the barrier of spoilers.
Yeah. Find like a treasure box that Kiss and Kate Barlow left, and it ties in all of those like fantasy fun elements with like real issues, which I was just like, that's real cool, man. I like
It's like magical realism, kinda. Yeah, it's interesting. It's cool.
Yeah, and I think like it's kind of like the best way to kind of introduce kids to these kind of heavier themes, because they still kind of there's still enough fun that it doesn't feel like they're being lectured to, and you kind of they don't ever really explain like, oh, he's being killed because he's black, but like it's implied enough that you kind of get the point across. So I feel like if you're a kid, you're able to. It makes it easier to process, or you're not dealing with every heavy theme, but enough of it so that you understand it, and you also like it's not too heavy that you're like, I don't like this movie because it's too downbeat,
Right.
Yeah. It never like sours the mood, even though they are some pretty heavy themes.
Right.
So that's
But and it's still given that kind of weighty heft, which like it's a very thin line that they're walking on, but I think they managed to do it very well.
there's also this very like this is one of those things where it's like, are these lizards poisonous? Where they're like, oh, these like poisonous lizards plague the desert.
Yeah.
And like kind of a constant menace. Like John Voight like shoots one, it's actually pretty graphic. You see its like head blown off on the ground, but it's like damn for a kids movie. But they're just like kind of like a real like bearded dragons, and they just like CGI'd a few of them. I was like, are they poisonous in real life? It's like not at all. This is just for the movie. They're like,
Right.
Yeah.
we need a lizard.
Yeah. That's what I kind of found like charming about it too, because like I had bearded dragons when I was younger.
Oh, really?
And then I saw them and they're being like used these like poisonous lizards, and I'm like, that's not them at all. But all right, I mean, you do you. Like, but yeah,
That is a very little kid thing. You just see a lizard in the desert, like it's evil and poisonous, and like it'll like
Right.
jump at your face.
Yeah, I saw a lizard last night and I freaked out. So you don't have to.
really. What kind of lizard?
I don't know. I was outside. I was too frightened.
You were too bright.
One of those little like 2-inch ones, and you're just like,
Yeah, like little like pink geckos that
Yeah.
shop everywhere.
It probably was one of those.
I think those ones are adorable though. So I don't know what you're talking about. Being afraid of them.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think like it's filmed really well, like the cinematography and like just the kind of way you're going through, and really like to me, Sigourney. It's funny because I think about Shia LaBeouf now and the movies he kind of approaches now, and you forget that like when he started, he was very much playing like every kid, like he was always that kind of avatar for children.
It was very like because apparently even I was like reading about the production and when they were like looking for the actor to play Stanley Yelnats. We never said the name, which is ridiculous. It's a palindrome, Stanley Yelnats. The like director was like, oh, I want someone who's like a young Tom Hanks, and it's like, oh yeah, Shia LaBeouf was kind of the everyman like affable type, and then the rest of his life happened, unfortunately. Right. But for a while, I mean, that's like him in all those Transformers movies. Like, oh, he's just the plucky underdog who's just trying to make his way in the world.
Yeah, like he was always played like he's harmless.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, like now he just strictly sticks to like, oh, he's the psycho roles.
I know. You kind of wonder what those like kids movies did to him.
I know.
Make him go stray so far from the path, but yeah, he just had that very boyish look, which really worked here. And also, like I was reading about like when they were doing like the casting, because in the book, Stanley Yelnats, he like starts off as like a pretty chubby kid, and then he gets really skinny. But they decided against it just to make sure that Shia LaBeouf didn't have to go through this huge health.
Well, and I think that would have been too hard to ask a child actor to do. Like,
yeah, and also there's probably some flaws against that.
It's like do the Christian Bale destroy your body for this role thing.
I would have liked to see the version of Holes that was filmed like Castaway, where they shot like the first half and then they let Shia LaBeouf lose 40 pounds, so he's emaciated, and then they should have been horrified. It would have been too much.
We should state though too this is like a relic of the time is that you don't just get what?
Oh, Siri went off for a second. Now I gotta edit this thing.
Nah, man.
You don't just get Shia LaBeouf acting; you get Shia LaBeouf rapping over the credits, and that's an important thing to remember. Is that all kids' movies used to end with people rapping over the credits?
Damn, I do think like it is funny the credits because the movie, like I said, it's pretty serious and it's pretty hefty, and then like end the credits, it ends with like them looking at the camera and smiling, and I was like, that's not the movie that you guys should make. I don't want to see Sigourney Weaver like smiling and waving at the camera.
I also I loved just because the end they get the treasure in the end, obviously, and thanks to the magic of their purity, the lizards don't attack them for several hours, so they're
No,
able
it
to
was
get the.
because they ate onions. 'Cause
Yeah, and they smelled like onions.
Oh
yeah.
man, was I not paying attention? I mean, is this kids movie too smart for me?
I mean, maybe
I
if
know.
they had more Transformers, you would have understood more.
I know they drink magic peach juice at one point,
Yeah, the fermented like old jars of.
and they call it sploosh, and that name would not play well today.
Yeah, but it is like,
Oh,
I remember when me and Valerie did that short that's coming out hopefully soon. Um, there's like a scene where she mentions the Ghostbusters and she has to say like, well, "Bustin' makes me feel good," which is a line from the song. And she was like, "Are you sure you want to say this?" I was like, "It's a line." I had to like show her the quote from Ghostbusters to be like, "Look, no here."
Please understand that is not what
this,
you think it is. Yeah.
this is not what we're talking about. But no, okay, they get the treasure, and then it's like AT&T stocks from like 1905, which would be you'd be a multimillionaire at least, you know.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it just shows that all of the kids from the camp just live together on like a big mansion compound. And I was like, oh, what a little kid's idea of like, I'm a
Yeah.
millionaire. All my friends are going to come live at my house, you
Yeah.
know?
But I feel like they earned that kind of fun ending.
Oh, I know. I love that. Yeah. It's,
Yeah, 100%. And like, yeah, it's that balance of like, oh, it's like a kids movie, and then also doing so. Yeah, I think it kind of was very fitting with the overall themes going on in the movie, even though
yeah.
it had that kid element was needed for that good feeling ending.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's also like the scene that I want to talk about earlier. There's a scene where at the very end, one of the kids comes up to Shia LaBeouf and he like writes down his mom's number and he says like, "Oh, call my mom and tell her like I'm sorry. Like tell her that I said I'm sorry." And it kind of drives that point home where like, what really is the point of a juvenile detention center? Like, I mean, I'm against prisons in almost every aspect of them right now, but like a children's prison just seems so much more, especially when you realize like most kids who commit crimes, either like a lot of them it's out of necessity or out of like whatever reason, but like it's way easier to rehabilitate a kid than anyone else. And it's like, so throwing them into prison and treating them like they are worth saving is kind of like the grossest thing you can do, And so
Yeah.
it kind of really adds that point. And again, it's just that little take, but it kind of like it says so much. And I think it makes it easier for kids to kind of digest some of these heavier themes without really beating you over the head with it. And so I don't know, I just think that was a very smart way to kind of approach the idea of what they're doing.
Yeah, it kind of really drives the point home that they're like, oh yeah, these are kids and they can change pretty quickly because their minds are still in that moldable phase. And I mean, luckily with this movie, they didn't kind of dive into how like messed up the adults in the detention facility could mess up the kids.
Right.
But like they did it as like they were all helping each other to kind of grow and like be better. And yeah, so that's what I liked about this movie too. But it does touch on that issue, like, hey, these are kids and they can get very easily messed up very quickly, unlike in adult detention facilities.
Right. Yeah, and I think I don't know. It's such like because you've heard about this movie for a while. It's like a kind of a cult classic film, and I had never seen it, and so it's interesting to see because you kind of automatically understand why it's a cult classic. It's just like I also understand why it probably wasn't super popular when it came out because you don't see a lot of kid dramas, and I think like
Yeah,
like,
it's
did that,
almost it's almost like very singular. It's like, oh, they weren't really doing this that because there's like Disney Channel original movies and stuff, but they're usually a little bit even lighter than even this.
Right.
It's like this hit this like balance that's very rare, like for like
Yeah.
a kids movie. So
Yeah, and I'm always a fan of
interesting.
movies where they don't talk down to the kids, where they kind of treat them with I wouldn't say respect, but it's more like they treat them with that kind of the earned. We understand that you guys will probably get this. We don't have to spoon feed everything to you.
Right, exactly. It's a very, again, with the adult themes, but being set in a way that they can understand.
But then because it's a kids movie, you also get to have scenes like Sigourney Weaver has rattlesnake venom nail polish that she cuts
Right.
people with to sting them when she's displeased.
So badass, honestly.
And then you
It's
have the
such,
scene at the end where John Boyd's like hiding, but he's just hiding behind like a tiny.
oh, yeah, with like a news, like a tiny newspaper, like it's a Looney Tunes thing. And it
Yeah.
turns out he's his name is Marion Sevillo of El Paso, Texas. He's
He's
like
from El
a
Paso, and he's a criminal just like everyone else in El Paso. Find out more when you watch Borderland on Tubi.com. But yeah, I think that's what I like. They never really like let you forget that this is the audience for this is kind of tween kids, and so I think like it keeps to me it seems like it would keep them engaged and also like kind of be able to work with such a heavy story without sacrificing anything or making it post-apocalyptic, you know.
yeah. Although I do want to see now the Holes remake that's set in like the year 2177.
Yeah, or
The
he's like
bombs have
murdering.
fallen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
And
always
you
think
could get Shia LaBeouf again, just
yeah.
current crazy Shia LaBeouf.
The one that always makes me laugh is like After Earth was originally like a story about a dad and a son who get lost like in the woods and have to survive. And then M. Night Shyamalan was like, "What if we make it on another planet?" And kind of don't really change anything else. And I was like, "Okay, good job, guys." I like when they go the other way. Like, let's make this more complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Holes.
holes. Yeah, I think it's good. The only thing
Talking
is
them
like, oh
holes.
my gosh, there's a scene and they like Shia LaBeouf and Zero, they escape and they're kind of like climbing over the mountain and they get on the other side and they find like this water and the green grass and stuff and they find all these onions. That's where they eat them, which eventually protects them from the lizards. But there's like a scene where they wake up and there's just like a million onions that have been eaten. And if that had been me, I would have been like, oh yeah, I took like one bite and then that was it. Like I'm not eating it. It's gross.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
gross.
I mean, they explained in it that it was just very sweet onion, like compared to any other onion, like it tasted more like an apple than anything. So.
It could be the sweetest onion in the world. It's still an onion.
Yeah, I guess you're
I would
right.
have
I mean,
gotten.
I don't dislike onions. A little onion garnish on like a burger, you know. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
ain't
love
hating
how
it too much.
all of those elements were like tuned in with like the kiss and Kate Barlow with the peaches,
Mhm.
and then oh god, what was his name? African American guy. I'm forgetting his name.
Oh,
but he
Gus
had
is
the
there. Yeah.
he had the onion
Dual
farm
Hill.
selling.
Sam is his
Sam
name.
was the
Sam, that's
actual
right.
name. Yeah. Dual Hill
Yeah.
is his
Yeah,
actual name.
yeah,
Sam is
Sam. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had the onion farm, and that's what they found was Sam's old onion farm on
Mhm.
top of God's Thumb Mountain. And oh gosh, and what was the name of the witch that originally cursed the original Stanley Yelnats?
Oh, let's see if we can find it. Josh, do you
One of
remember?
No,
Or one of the ancestors of the Stanley Yelnats.
let me see. Well, I know Henry Winkler's the dad, and that's not.
No, that doesn't help at all.
By the way, they do give Henry Lee
Madame
Winkler.
Zeroni, yes.
Yeah, Madame Zeroni.
And see,
Oh
like
yeah.
everyone has like a nickname. Like there's X-Ray, there's Madame Zeroni, and it's also Eartha Kitt. You don't see Eartha Kitt a lot, so I thought that was cool. She was the original Catwoman.
Yeah. There's a bunch of really awesome cast members in here
Yeah.
for sure.
Even Rick Fox shows up to be the most petty athlete of all time, who sends kids to jail for no reason.
Shoes, okay.
Yeah, he
They're both giving away.
Yeah,
to
like-
them.
didn't just sign a different pair of shoes for charity or whatever the fuck. Yeah, no, it's
It's like if this is easy for anyone, Rick Fox, it's you. Just go get another pair of shoes and sign that pair of shoes.
imagine like an athlete is testifying at a child's trial to give him like a badge to be like, put this kid away.
Yeah. And then at the end, they like because then it's also funny because they keep cutting back to Henry Winkler who plays the dad, and he's like trying to figure out a recipe so that shoes don't stink. And then at the end, they like figure out the recipe, and so they hire Rick Fox to be the spokesperson. I was like, I wouldn't hire him. I would hire anyone
you
else.
Put away your kid in like this weird scam fucking camp in the middle of nowhere, you know? Like, what? I don't know. Yeah, that part I was always a little confused. About,
Can we also say too? Well, Shia LaBeouf, Stanley was a fan of Rick Fox. He had like the poster,
Right.
so it's like okay, he reconnected with his childhood hero. But the name they come up with for it is sploosh as well. That's the name they use for the like chemical that.
They
So
really dove all into sploosh.
they went all in on sploosh. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Secret ingredient was peaches and onions.
Yes.
Apparently.
This is a very fruit-oriented movie, is what we're learning.
Fruit
And also, I don't know if you guys stayed after the credits. There is a brief after the credits scene.
Really? What was it?
It's just it's just Zero being like, "Watch out for the curse of Madame Zeroni," or something, something like that. So it's just like a little nice thing. So
That's cool.
yeah, it's like remember when after the credit scenes were charming instead of an exhausting obligation.
Yeah, an obligation you have to do to understand the next 3 other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like all right. I guess I'll learn about Thor's grandfather. I don't know. But no, it's good. It had music too by not just Shia LaBeouf rapping, by Beck and Shaggy, another artifact of the early 2000s. Shaggy.
Yeah, we love talking about the artists that are on our soundtrack of this audio podcast, but you don't hear the movie at all.
Well, I assume you'd get the rights to the Shaggy song and play it over the end of this.
Also, Shaggy?
I know.
It does not
Shaggy?
fit this movie whatsoever.
You know what? They just do whatever.
They were throwing it out there.
They throw in.
It's back in the time where they would be like, these artists are on the soundtrack, and they're like, you hear it for half a second at the middle.
Yeah, they play 10 seconds of it in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Batman Forever effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Zero was like Madame Zeroni's ancestor. And what was the... Yeah, so why the curse was lifted was whenever they were up there on the mountain with the onions, and he just happened to sing the one song that Madame Zeroni said that his ancestor had to sing to her to bring her up the mountain.
But see, and that's the funny thing is that there's like, because there's a scene where he explains that him and Shia LaBeouf are more connected because he stole the shoes and threw them and it hit Shia LaBeouf in the head, and that's why Shia LaBeouf got accused of it.
Right.
And so then Shia LaBeouf kind of makes a mention that like, oh, it's fate. And so I kind of took it like him singing the song and them finding the onion feet. Like that was all kind of playing into the fact that them getting together is really what lifted the curse. And so it was like kind of like, because they knew how to like work with each other, that they were able to like solve all the riddles of like where the treasure was, how to actually like how to sing the song, you know?
Yeah.
Right. It's like destiny in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I didn't mind that. That was good to me. I like that.
And it's cool because then at the end they like end up living next to each other, and they're like, that's really like the end of it. Like because the whole thing is about how they like looked at others as if they weren't fit to be in the town, and so at the end having them live together like the ancestors, proving the old ancestor people wrong, kind of really like it's a great way to kind of sync it all together, you know?
Yeah, kind of righting the wrongs of the past. That's kind of like the whole theme, one of the main themes of the movie, which I really liked. Oh god, I was gonna say something, but it immediately left my brain.
Yeah.
So he'll come back.
Perfect. Yeah, I think, and it's also like, I don't know, there's so many ways that this could have gone wrong, but it really works. And I do love any movie where they're like, we have like the mom role, but then they could have like gotten anyone because it's not that big a role, but they got the girl, the Edgar girl from Men in Black, who just kind of like elevates.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they didn't need Eartha Kitt, they didn't need Patricia Arquette, but they got these actors because it kind of like, it gives a little bit more weight to even the side characters, and I think that really helps make the movie better, you know?
Yeah, they're all very distinct.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's what I really liked. And also, like, I was going to mention, like, Zero's backstory with him, like, losing his mom, and then the end, like, they're finally able to find him because he's able to hire a private investigator. That one made me a little emotional, man.
Yeah, the money really did solve all their problems.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's like another like real life issue that they kind of touched on that was more modernized. Was like, oh yeah, they were homeless and like he just got separated from his
Right,
mom.
right.
Right.
Yeah, so it was just that was just another kind of element where I'm like, man, these are like real issues getting
Yeah.
dealt upon. Yeah, like they really got that balancing act down of like the feel good stuff and like the real heavy hitting stuff. And yeah, I keep on repeating that, but that's just what I love about this movie. And it's like kind of yeah, it's just that what I completely got away from this film was just how good that balance was.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's again, I think to me that's the most impressive part about this is how it's able to handle so many themes, so many different like hard hitting kind of topics, but you never really lose track of what the movie is doing and how it's not trying to like make you leave super sad, but it is trying to tell this story about important things. And so yeah, that's a tough thing to do, and they did it pretty well, you know.
Yeah, and
Mm.
also like all of those elements were in the book as well, and they just managed to again translate that in such a good way that could be translated into the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be difficult. Yeah. So it's funny because usually, like, whenever someone says like, "Oh, this is like a kids movie, but it has stuff for adults," I think of something like Shrek, where it's just a kids movie where they like reference the Matrix and stuff, and it's
Mhm.
like, no, this is actually like a kids movie that an adult could
Yeah.
like, kind of like get something out of it, not just like
Right, right.
one-off jokes and stuff. So it's good. It's very very distinct. I almost
Yeah.
want to like find other movies like it, just because it's such a rarity to be like, oh, like has any movie come out since that kind of it all comes together like that? And I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So
Yeah. Well, and I think like it kind of reminds me of another film we reviewed was Raising Victor Vargas, where I think putting it through the lens of the kids, you kind of it keeps it at their level without like having to dumb it down because you're kind of like Victor Vargas, you're like you can tell that they want to be more grown, but since they're not, they treat everything kind of like how kids would, and so that keeps it grounded in a way that you understand that it's from the kid's point of view. Like one of the biggest things is at one point they steal John Voight's like sunflower seeds, and then they're trying to hide them and stuff, and it's like that's such a little kid thing to steal something that's easily noticeable. Just like in his car that he's eating. Why would you steal these sunflower seeds? But like, I can understand why a kid would, you know?
it's also that is funny because it made me think it's like, man, if I was digging holes for hours, like, do you want sunflower seeds? No, I don't. That's it's like the
know.
driest possible snack.
Driest,
Yeah.
salty, hardest thing to eat, and it's like, nah.
Yeah.
I also just I don't know if you guys caught this. This isn't any like CinemaSins ding style bullshit. But um, they would totally cut to like Shia LaBeouf digging to show like how hard it was that they didn't like. Oh, it's like they don't even give him gloves, but then he would have gloves in like the very next like cut, and then he would be back to no gloves. It's like
Oh,
I
right.
bet that's because you would really fuck up your hands if you filmed that much digging without gloves.
Yeah.
So like, just give them gloves.
Yeah.
It's we don't want these like kids getting their hands mangled.
Yeah.
So
That was definitely a Shallow or a Cinema Sin style thing, and never bring that up again.
I know I'm saying I denigrate that kind of ding,
You can't denigrate it and then say it.
but I did notice it, and I was like, that's kind of funny. But I see exactly why they did it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's that kind of thing where you kind of have to, like, I mean, every time they dig a hole, it's like 6 feet deep, and it's like, how do these kids, how hard it is to dig a hole? You'll find out if you watch the last ones over here. We dug 3 graves, and it took a long time, and I was like, we're 3 feet in, that's good enough. And we put bubble.
It's like the camera angle works to make this look deeper. Yeah,
We just
yeah,
needed
that's
enough.
super hard.
Things.
Yeah, and I mean, those are, what was it again? It was like 5 foot by 6 foot.
Yeah.
Is that what they had to do? Like,
It was
Jesus
big,
Christ.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for a while, because he's teaching Zero to read, Zero is digging his hole. So it's like, how is this tiny child digging 2 large holes every day?
Every
Oh.
day, it would be like the next day, all those kids would just be passed out because they wouldn't be able to move. But I mean, and it's those things. You kind of have to like let it go.
Yeah, it's all magical realism. I like it. I enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I think it's a good movie. I think it's fun. I think it's definitely worth watching, especially if you have kids or if you are a kid. I don't know what our audience is. I don't know what
I would still watch it.
Yeah.
I'm an adult technically, so I guess anyone.
Right.
To the 10-year-old watching our Unhinged review, go watch Olsen.
Go watch
You came here for our review where that movie. What's that movie, Josh? Where Javier Bardem plays a rapist Mexican cartel guy.
Perdida Tarango.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
now you're at Holes. So welcome, welcome, child. Um, yeah, no, but it's a fun movie. I think it was. Yeah, I think it's anyone could watch it. The audience isn't really just kids, but I think especially for kids, it's a pretty cool movie to watch, and it kind of, especially now, it's super relevant. Especially like, I mean, everyone's different is like one of the most basic lessons, but I also think it's an important one, and I think this one does it particularly well. So I think it's definitely worth watching, especially if you have kids or if you know kids.
And despite being made in 2003, it escaped the shadow of 9/11. So
Yeah, yeah. 2 years afterwards, who would have thought? This is our anniversary. Well, thank you, Gayla, for stopping by. Next time, we're gonna pick a movie for you to watch.
Alrighty then.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you, Josh, for giving us Cinema Sin style critiques. We could not expect anything less from a producer. But we'll see you guys next time
I was
on.
doing it ironically.
Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Bomb Squad.